Okay guys, I posted this trig cheat sheet just for your access. There's a few units in calculus where we need to use this, and there's some that don't really have much trig in them at all. So I'm going to kind of highlight the areas that you're going to use. At some point we are going to use this. This is SOH CAH TOA. You learned hopefully in geometry and in pre-cal. So we have the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, tangent is TOA, so it's opposite over adjacent, and then these are the reciprocals. So cosecant, it's the kind of weird or odd trig function. C is paired with the S, and here we have S paired with the C. So you can have like the more regular one that you know, sine and cosine, paired with the one that you don't say as often, the S and C paired together. So this one is H over O, this is H over A, and this is A over O. The other things we're going to be talking about are these identities. So you do need to know these identities. Sometimes you're going to use them. And so this is the tangent is sine over cosine, cotangent is the reciprocal of that. Reciprocal identities, which I just mentioned, cosecant in the top is sine in the bottom, and vice versa. Same for secant and cosine, and cotangent and tangent. Now, these guys are also important. Will be used occasionally. I have sayings to help remember them that another teacher shared with me years ago. So this one, if you sin, it will cost you $1. This one is I tan in a sec. So sin cost you $1. This is I tan in a sec. So one is like the I, and this is I cut cheesecake. Can't help you remember. These are Pythagorean theorem identities. So it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Because on the unit circle has a radius of 1, and this is your sine value, x, would be cosine, and this is y would be sine. And so we know that x squared plus y squared equals 1 squared, which is where we get this. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And if we divide this by cosine, we get cosine squared, we get this formula. And if you divide it by sine squared, you get that formula. You don't have to worry about really much else on the rest of this page, but I just have it linked for your, just in case you need it at some point. You might use some of it in calculus too with some integration techniques. Now the unit circle, you do need to know the unit circle. If you don't have it memorized completely, that's okay, but you need to be able to at least figure out, to reason through what the values are. So if I say, what's the sine of 5 over 3, and you don't just call out square root of 3 over 2, that's okay, but you need to have a way of figuring it out. So one way that I figure this out is I count by pi's over 6 around the circle. So this is 1/6, this would be 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, you count all the way around. So that's to get the radians, and we really just use radians almost always in calculus. And then you count pi over 4, and this would be 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. So kind of just focus on this first quadrant here, because then you can reason all the other quadrants. And what I want you to think about is there's only a few values on the unit circle. Those values are 0, 1/2, root 2 over 2. Whoops, I wrote that wrong. I'm sorry. Root 3 over 2 and 1. From smallest to biggest. So I kind of just think about, if I'm talking about the unit circle and I went over all the way here, what's the biggest number? 1. So that means my x value is 1, and I went up none. This one, I went over a lot and up a little bit. So a lot would be this one, and a little, relatively, would be this one. So that's why that's square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. This one, you went over and up the same. These are the same amount, so it's root 2 over 2, the middle one. And then this one is the reciprocal, or the opposite of this one. So I went over a little bit, up a lot. So 1/2 root 3 over 2. And then this one is 0, 1. Now, how do I read this? Anytime I ask for the sine value of an angle, you're going to give me the y, and I ask for cosine and give me the x. So for instance, if I said, what is the cosine of pi over 6? You know you're going to see the x value here. The x value there is root 3 over 2. Or if I said, what is the sine value of pi over 4? Well, that's the y value here, which is root 2 over 2. Or if I said, what is the cosine at pi over 3? That's the x value here, 1/2. If we ask for tangent, tangent is y over x. So the tangent here is 0. The tangent here would be 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2, which is the same as 1/2 times the reciprocal. So it's 1 over the square root of 3, or square root of 3 over 3. The tangent here is 1, and then the tangent here is the square root of 3, and the tangent here is undefined. So that's kind of just a quick review of the unit circle, and you will be using that occasionally. The rest of this isn't used as much in calculus, but we will do arcs, arc sine, inverse sine a little bit, inverse cosine, inverse tangent. But hopefully that helps you, a quick recap of some trig properties you need to know.